Welcome everyone. In this session, we'll go through this blog post and we'll try to understand the executors and callback groups. Thanks to the author sharing their experience. Here we have two types of executor. One is a single thread executor and multi-thread executor. Single thread executor, it's execute the callbacks one by one. So here mostly focus on the multi-thread executor, which allows to execute the callbacks in parallel. Here we have two types of callback groups in ros2. One is mutually exclusive callback group and next one is re-entrant callback group. Mutually exclusive callback groups allows the executor to execute simultaneously, but within the group it will be like single thread executor, like it will be execute one by one. Here we can see in this example we have two groups, two mutually exclusive groups. So group 1 have a callback 1 and callback 2. Group 2 have a callback 3 and callback 4. In this case, in group 1, um, once the callback 1 completed, then only the callback 2 will be initiated. In this case, group 1 and group 2 will be um, executed parallelly. In this case, CB1 will running parallelly and callback 3 will run parallelly. So, but within the group, it will be like a single thread executor. The next one is a re-entrant callback group. So this allows the executor to execute parallel. Like even though it is a callback one is running, it allows to start callback two. Then we'll see where and all the callbacks are used. Mostly on subscription callbacks, timer callbacks, and service different callbacks, and done callbacks and futures. So here we'll see an example. Here we have a timer. It have a callback, timer callback. So when the time scheduler comes, it will execute. Then we have a subscription. We'll have a listener callback. So once the this topic get the message, this listener callback will be triggered. Some of the callbacks are used internally, like we are calling, we are making a synchronous call to service or action. The futures done callback will be added. So once the um, future is done, it will trigger this callback. Next one is how we can use the callback groups for the execution. Um, if we have a non-thread safe resources, like if we are having a resource which will be used by multiple callbacks, in the sense we'll assign all the callbacks in the same group. Next one is if you find if the instance of the same callback is overlapping. Like for example, here we have a timer callback. It will schedule every second. Say for example, if this callback is executing more than 2 seconds, in this case, if you are fine, it like if you are fine, it will trigger the next one. So we'll make it as a re-entrant callback group. So even though the first callback is not finished, so the second one will be triggered. Next one is if we want callback should be executed parallelly. In this case, we have to use a re-entrant callback group. Otherwise, we have to assign a different callback group for all callbacks. So, for example, um, so here we have two callbacks. So we have to assign each separate group for each callbacks, then it will be executed parallelly. Next one is how we can avoid deadlocks. So first way is we have to use asynchronous method to call. Otherwise, we have to use random callback or different callback for each different callback groups for each callback. We will go through the example here. So here we have a service node and we have a client node. So client call will be triggered through timer or we can call manually. And we'll have a run test method which creates instance of this client and add it to the executor and create an instance of the service node, and it will create a single thread executor for a service node. And here we have different scenarios. We'll see the first scenario. First scenario is like default callback group for both client as well as the timer, and we'll trigger through manual. So in this case, if it is a manual call, the timer will not be initiated. So it will not go through this condition. So we will have only one callback, that is done callback if we call the service. Since it have only one callback, so there will be no overlapping. So we'll execute this one. So the service has been completed. The next one is we'll use the default callback group for both, and we'll use the timer to trigger the. We'll build it again. So in this case, the timer callback has been executed. So um, it is sender request and server has received the request, but will not client is not getting any response. We'll see here we have so default callback under default callback group we have a timer and done callback. In so since timer is still executing, it is not allowing to execute the done callback. So you are not receiving the response. So the deadlock situation has occurred. Next one is we are assigning a callback to one of the callback, assigning a callback group to one of the callback. Next one is a default group. In this case, like we are having a default callback group for one of the callback, and we are assigning. So one of the callback will be assigned, and one of the callback will be default. So in this case, um, there will be no overlapping. So it will be executed. So every 2 seconds, that um, the request will be sent to the server. And okay, the next scenario is like same scenario, but we are interchanging the groups. So one of like here we are having a timer callback under assign. The done callback will be under default group. So in this, it is like a previous scenario. It will be there will be no overlapping and it will be executing fine. So we'll go for the next scenario. We'll have a two. We are creating a two groups and we are assigning each callback under separate group. So in this case also there will be no overlapping. Like here we have a group one, group two. Each callback have a different groups. So there will be no overlapping deadlock scenario. So it will work fine. The next one is we are assigning a callback. We are creating a callback group and we are assigning the callbacks to the same group. In this sense, it is like in the sense like we are creating a group, but all both callback will be on the same group. So in this sense, first timer will be triggered. So um, it will not allow to execute the done callback. So the deadlock will be occurred. So we'll execute that scenario. So we enable that scenario and we'll build it. So it sends a request, but we didn't get any response. Another scenario is like we are using a re-entrant callback group, but both will be under same group. Both callbacks will be under same group. So we'll build it again, and so it will be work fine. There will be no deadlock in this scenario.